The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, along with Dan Rylance. And this evening, we're very, very pleased to be joined by two members of the staff over at the Oshkosh Northwestern. To my left is Stu Rieckman, and to his left is Alex Hummel. I'm sure both gentlemen are familiar to all of you in the community. We've asked them here because we'd like to talk about different changes that are going on at the Oshkosh Northwestern. A lot of exciting changes, especially from an electronic journalism standpoint, and then we'll talk about some local news issues too, so I'm sure we'll have time for that. So thanks to both of you for being here.
Well, thanks for asking.
Appreciate it very, very much.
Thanks for having us.
I guess, the first thing, for anyone who has access to the internet, they've been seeing kind of a virtual makeover for a number of months now. And Alex, you've been pretty instrumental in a lot of that. Now, are you guys a beta version for kind of a test version for Gannett, or no?
You're going to break out the technical stuff right away.
Oh, we don't have to get real technical, but just...
It's a good question.
What's transpired is that back in October of '06, the company came up with a strategy to transform the industry, and it's called the Local Information Center. And quite unlike anything that Gannett has ever done in the past, they said, we don't have a playbook. We don't have a blueprint for you to follow. We have some certain concepts that we think are important to our communities. Go back home and put it into play and figure it out. And some of the things that we're doing are highly experimental. They're being watched very closely by the people at our corporate headquarters to find out if there's applicability in other marketplaces. But some of the things that we have done, I guess you could call it beta, but it's beta because we've made it beta. It's very, very experimental. I think that Alex has been cutting edge on some of the things that he's done with forums and conversations on the formerly editorial page, now the conversation page.
Well, let's talk about the Osh Conversation. I love the name, by the way. I don't know who came up with that.
Thank you.
That was Alex.
Well, I love it very much. And so for anyone watching, Osh Conversation is basically a discussion board where if you're a registered member or a registered user, I should say, you can converse with people anywhere in the world who are conversing on that particular subject. How's that been going so far?
I've been actually quite surprised and pleased with the way people have found unique and creative ways to get their messages out, get their opinions out there, and the civility with which people have had. The one knock on public forums, no matter where they are, is people get real ugly and can get real nasty and vicious and attack each other, and you don't have that name to an opinion on the forums. But to be quite honest, I think when you bring forums to a community on a local level, there's sort of a more local appreciation for it. People police it better. They feel like it's more theirs, and I'm glad that people feel that way about it, because the newspaper runs the forums and the posting boards at thenorthwestern.com. I always tell people, hey, we're just here minding the store. It belongs to the community. That's the way I like to keep it. So far, I've been really pleased with the way people have used it.
That's just one element of a whole slew of forums that you guys are offering. There's another section where people can discuss jogging. They can discuss, at one time they were discussing poker, I think. I don't know if they're still doing that or not.
We had a staff member who was a big poker fan, and kind of another part of this revolution in the digital side of media is you suddenly look inward at some of the expertise and interests of your own staff, and somebody says, hey, by the way, I like poker, I like jogging. And you say, well, if you do, and hopefully we're representative human beings over there, there's probably other people out there that do too.
Right.
And so we've given people the opportunity to ask questions, start up conversations about those various things, and it works.
Well, it does, and I don't know if you've been there, Dan, but I've kind of surfed around a little bit, and you can discuss at the end of each story now.
Story
you
chat.
can add comments on the story.
Yep.
Then you can go into the Osh conversation, or you can just go to the big discussion board, where you can talk about not just the newsy type events, but you
Right.
can talk about jogging, you can talk about health issues, you can talk about business, and
Right.
what have you. The one thing that I've noticed, though, is that some of the more meaty topics are discussed in multiple places.
Yeah.
And I think some of the conversation might be getting lost a little bit
I
in
agree.
the shuffle.
That's a problem I'm kind of trying to work through right now and address, because when you have a good story that triggers story chat right out of the chute at the end of the story, and here we've also started a more step back topic in our forums, it's going on in two places. And the cool thing is the forum users out there will be the first to let me know about it, and I'm glad for that. They'll say, hey Alex, you've got something going on in story chat that's a real good conversation, but yet you also want us to go over here. And I kind of email them back and say, good point. I'll try to merge those as best I can, or we'll be more cognizant of that in the future and try to, if we've got a good chat going, there's no need to, I guess, draw people's attention away from that. So
One of the unexpected highlights that has developed is we're actually getting pretty good story tips and story suggestions. The story of the wallaby and the dogs at Menominee Park, when we first reported the story, we underreported it. And the people on the forums came back and said, hey, have you thought about this? Did anybody know, the dog owner, and who pays for the wallaby, and are there fines involved? And it caused us to stop and take a look at our reporting and go back out and ask some questions that readers wanted to know more information on. So it serves as kind of a checkup on our reporting, where people will really come in and say, you weren't clear enough on this point, or we needed more information on that. So it helps us sharpen our reporting skills because of the direct and immediate feedback that we get on specific stories.
I want to continue with changes, but I'm a print person rather than computer. So I want to go to the editorial page.
okay, sure.
Because you've done a lot of changes.
We have.
And I want to ask you first about the community columnist feature. Where did you come up with it? What's been your feedback so far on it?
Well, when we took a look at what we needed to accomplish with the local information center, one of the 7 principles was be the center of community conversation. And we had a pretty good idea of how that would work electronically. But we didn't want to eliminate the possibility of more local conversation in print. My observation was that editorial pages, by their nature and history, tend to be very institutionalized, very stodgy, very gray, very lecturing. And we wanted to truly be a center of community conversation. We had to find a way to bring the community into the page in a non-threatening way. And we started by taking a look at the syndicated columnists, the Cal Thomases and the Mona Sharons, who really preach from a national level and from a highly partisan point of view. And we thought that type of commentary is available on cable TV, Hannity and Combs, it's available on the internet. What can we do that is unique and local to Oshkosh? So we explored the idea of offering the opportunity for local columnists, local individuals, to have center stage on what was formerly the editorial page, and we've rechristened it as Today's Conversation, because we wanted it to be an invitation for people to share their thoughts with the community. Alex has done a terrific job facilitating that.
I think that I had a gentleman email me just this last week. In fact, he kind of emailed, I guess, in the form of a letter to the editor, and was really concerned about that change. And I emailed him shortly thereafter, and I said, I appreciate your letter. Let me explain a little bit behind it. There's a whole generation, I think, of newspaper readers, or shall I say non-newspaper readers, people who have not made the newspaper part of their daily ritual, who, if they aren't picking up the newspaper, or if they are picking up the newspaper rather, they're breezing past that page, the old opinion page. They're not seeing any conversation or any kind of engagement there that is part of their life now, I think. And so the idea with the community columnists is to really open the door very wide for the community to reclaim that page as their own. I mean, that really should be the community page.
You've certainly given it to them.
Yeah.
When I was preparing for questions, I got to ask sort of a contrarian question on the other side. And here is this letter written to the paper today that, in a sense, kind of was the essence of what I was. And I'd just like to read one paragraph
Sure.
because I kind of think it hits that argument on the other side.
Yep.
And this is from John Frings. It's a good letter, I thought. When the Northwestern decided to do away with the syndicated columnist and instead choose community columnists, it essentially eliminated comments that were often unpopular. That in turn stimulated comments by local individuals, which was a good thing that fostered interesting discussion. Reading your editorial page these days would lead one to think there is nothing of importance going on in the world, and we all live in a perfect harmony. What would be your response to that?
I would say that if you took a community columnist selectively, he would prove his point. But I think if you look at it in totality, I think we've had some really cutting-edge commentary by individuals that are very good writers and can formulate an opinion. I'm thinking of John Lemberger, David Hayford. Several of our community columnists do get engaged in issue-oriented topics. Some of our columnists get engaged with more lifestyle type of topics. And so I think if you want to look at it selectively and point to, say, a Wendy Suzuki or maybe Wendy Falk, the topics can be a little bit softer in nature, but there's some pretty hard-hitting analytical pieces that are authored by local columnists.
And if I can build on that, when you have columnists that are repeatedly and commonly focusing on the political battle, right versus left, that sort of thing, there's a whole, I still argue there's an enormous audience out there that is tired of it. Doesn't mean you just wipe it off the face of the earth and make it go away. I mean, you can turn on your TV now, and if you're interested in that sort of political tussle, it's on at any given time on any number of channels. And so in really bringing the conversation closer to home, we want more columns about, I guess, criticism about, food choices. And I'm just thinking of some of them that have come across in the last week. I just fielded one this week. Shortly after there's been a discussion about promoting diversity and getting more diverse opinions and people into the newspaper. I got just a beautiful column this week that'll probably run next week from a writer who talks about the purchase of one of those plastic playgrounds in her backyard and how a Hmong family next door, their children started playing with her children. And it's essentially just a simple story, but so much is conveyed in those maximum 600 words that we have for those columns. So much is conveyed in that one column that the value and the worth of this project to me just made itself evident right there.
One more question.
Sure.
I always read John Lemberger, and I always listen to Bill O'Reilly because I want to test my sanity to see whether conspiracies either from the left or conspiracies from the right have any validity.
Yeah.
And I really feel good after either reading or listening to them because I still feel sane.
Yeah.
Sure.
But on Lemberg's column this week, he did what I thought was a first. He takes a shot at David Hayford,
Right.
both in the beginning and
Right.
the end. That's the first time I've seen the
Right.
community columnist take off after another one.
Right.
I thought that was kind of neat,
Yeah.
that I hope more of that happens a little
Well,
bit.
it ain't over.
It ain't over
Because
He's coming back.
I got in today or yesterday. Mr. Hayford sent in another community column, and to be fair, I don't want these community columns to go back and forth and back and forth because you're losing the readers really. But I told Mr. Hayford before he wrote this new column that I knew this day would happen. I knew this would happen.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I knew that we'd have one community columnist that took a controversial approach or an opinion at one issue. Another person took the opposing side, and they would probably trade a few jabs. And, I don't want it to get personal. I don't want it to be attacks. But guess what? This is conversation.
Yeah.
It isn't Cal Thomas versus, Leonard Pitts or anything. But it's local. And it's people hashing out a national issue on a local level. That's part of the
Let me give you an example of the level that Alex is taking this to. One of the columnists submitted a piece saying that downtown Oshkosh is dead, close the doors, lock it up, don't spend any more money down there. And Alex put out an invitation to our cadre of community columnists saying, we have a piece that's suggesting that Oshkosh should close up its efforts on downtown Oshkosh. Anybody want to take the opposite side? And one of the columnists said, "Yeah, I'm for downtown redevelopment.
Multiple did, actually.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to." And so we've got a pro and con piece coming in Sunday's newspaper.
Good.
Community columnists talking about a very vital issue of interest, and it's both points of view having that conversation vigorously back and forth.
And as I told the columnists, I see heads nodding on both sides of the argument here. There's some people that are clearly not feeling so confident about public investment in revitalization efforts. Fair enough. There are other people who look at downtown now versus downtown, 5, 6 years ago and go, whoa, quite the improvement, more vibrant, more events going on. They're going to get equal play. Those positions get equal play in the Sunday newspaper. I think that's one of the ultimate objectives of this thing.
Well, Hayford was accused of fuzzy thinking twice by Lemberger, so I'm sure that he'll get back to him.
Yeah.
Just one other thing on that. I submitted an article from Sweden, and you are so easy to work with. You sent that back to me 3 times, and you said, I would prefer you do the editing rather than me. And I think that's, from a writer standpoint,
Thanks.
that's incredibly writer-friendly to do that, and I really appreciate it.
There are some times when I've, we to be quite honest, we're not slashing these things.
Yeah.
I mean, they are not being ripped apart and edited to pieces. We honor what the community columnists have to say. Sometimes
And their
even,
style.
Sometimes maybe I'm sitting and holding my armchair, the arms of my chair a little bit, and how's the community going to react to this? I wonder. You know what though? That's kind of part of it. You want to see how the community reacts, and you want to keep that door open when they do react.
Sure.
So.
Well, I think you have a lot of good things going. Now, the bottom line question is, newspapers we know are in trouble. Circulation-wise, have you seen any change with these innovations?
Well, one of the things that that the transformation takes into account is we're no longer about paid circulation necessarily. We're about aggregated audiences.
Okay.
How many people are reading information that's generated and provided locally by the Northwestern? And the consumers that we have out there has never been higher. When you take into account website visits, participation in forums, our niche publications, the daily circulation of the newspaper, all adds up to a very healthy and vibrant industry that has got to convince Wall Street that the industry can grow. The problem that we're facing right now is driven by Wall Street's assumption that we are a no-growth industry. And if you want to take a look at paid circulation, the old business model, yes, you can make that argument. There's no paper in the country that's growing circulation. If there is, and they're making that claim, there needs to be an investigation. But when you take a look at the consumption of information generated by newspapers, it's never been higher.
How did you, plus you're selling advertising online.
That's correct.
And it seems like that has probably increased
That's
somewhat
correct.
since this all,
Yeah.
I'm assuming since a lot of these changes came
Right.
about.
As the number of, as we say, clicks, very big word, as the number of clicks and participation increase on the website, the more we have to go to an advertiser with and say, hey, we are becoming that information hub of Oshkosh. You're going to get the attention you want.
Well, and I think all one really has to do is visit, and they can see that there's a lot of things going on, and they're exciting changes. So hats off to you guys. How did you come about, Stu, finding some of these community journalists, community editorialists, whatever you'd like to call them?
Well, Alex put a solicitation into the newspaper saying, we're going to try this, it's a grand experiment, this is an opportunity for your voice to be heard very prominently on the formerly editorial page. We asked them to do audition columns for us. From those auditions, I think we had 35 or 40 audition columns come
Boy,
in.
it was probably pushing 50 when we...
And we narrowed that down to about 32 or 33 and said, congratulations, you made the first cut. Please submit a column for publication. We knew that there would be people who would get really excited about the opportunity and then find out that hey, there's no pay involved with this. This is more of a opportunity to share thoughts. And some have dropped by the wayside, but we have got a good, solid core that participate on an ongoing basis and really understand the concept that we're going for, and we hope they stay with us. We hope that they find it a worthwhile experience to share their thoughts.
Have you given any thought to identifying these columnists with like an email address so readers can get a hold of them?
As a matter of fact, just last week we were talking about kind of going back to our roster of columnists
Yeah.
and asking them, are you comfortable if
Yeah.
we put in a contact number or email in there if people wanted to continue a conversation with you, not in the necessarily
I missed
public.
that. I mean, you do that with all of your
Right.
writers.
Right.
And,
And my thinking on it was, these are community volunteers, are not the professionals.
No.
They don't have the thick skin
No.
that maybe Alex or I have. And what happens when they get that first call, that anonymous call that, goes into a tirade about their opinion? Is that really fair to them? But we're going back and we're asking them individually. Now, John Lemberger has attached his email address and has said, please let me know what you think about my columns.
Right.
He welcomes it. He
Right.
wants the feedback. So we're going back and trying to,
Yeah.
okay, are they well enough conditioned that they would like to get the direct response from the readers via email? I'm not sure about telephone numbers,
No,
but
I-
maybe email
yeah.
addresses.
And you should give them the choice, like you said.
Give
huh?
them the choice if they
Yeah.
want to get that
Yeah.
direct
This
feedback.
this is one more example of a lesson I think newspapers today are learning. The old school would have been, we're going to set a rule or a policy, and we're going to stick. That's it. That's the end of it. And when you're dealing with policies like this, which are more procedural, it doesn't make sense. I mean, we're reviewing our practices almost on a daily basis to ask ourselves, are we really meaningfully, serving the community? If not, we'll change it that day. I mean, and we'll let everybody in the information center know, look, we're going to do this a little differently now. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
not at
not
all.
like you're throwing your ethics out
No.
the window. You're just changing the sort of day-to-day operation.
And if they do put their name on a column and they do share it with people,
Mm-hmm.
you at least ought to ask them, well, would you be willing
Yeah.
to be identified
Right.
so that a reader can get a hold
Right.
of you? I mean, that's not unfair.
It's our responsibility to make them aware that
Yeah.
if you do leave it on there, you might get some calls, you might
Yeah.
get some emails.
Yeah,
and
well,
are you
so-
comfortable? Yeah.
Yeah, you got a little thicker skin if you're putting your nose out on page 4. I mean, I think, I don't know.
True.
One other thing that you've recently started, and if memory serves me correctly, I think it started with the Access Acquisition Group, if I'm not mistaken, where every Thursday afternoon for about 45 minutes?
Hour and a
Hour and a
half.
half.
Today we
Oh,
went
is
an
it
hour
longer?
45.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You can tell I don't participate much in that.
It's okay. It's growing.
I'm usually busy preparing
Yeah.
for this. But you're having like a live online conversation with newsmakers in the community. Who came up with that idea? Stu's going to say Alex.
No,
again?
well, we actually had Tim Reichers in for editorial board, and we were doing the regular, Q&A with him, and there was some fascinating information that we were getting, and we asked, and one of the problems that the Five Rivers group ran into was there was a feeling that they weren't accessible, they weren't letting the community in on what was going on, they weren't answering questions, and Tim was very cognizant of that. He was very sensitive to that. And as the editorial board was breaking up, somebody said, say, would you be interested in doing an online chat? And Tim was very, very responsive to that. Sure, give me some advance notice so I can work into my schedule. Our business reporter, Jeff Bollier, was there. And we thought Jeff would be the perfect person to engage him on the online chat. And Tim was very, very accommodating. Came up to the Northwestern. We weren't sure about the technology. We weren't
Right.
sure about the process. We plugged him into a laptop. We had him, online, and we thought it went very, very well.
I stuck a video camera in his face.
And we
too.
did a video.
Oh.
We did a video of it,
Yeah.
and we thought this is another tool in our toolkit to bring information to the community in a different forum, a different format, a different availability. And Alex has got it set up that it's going to be an ongoing feature. Thursday at 3, live chat. You can send in questions in advance, and we'll pose them to the newsmaker. And it's not. If I thought it was the only reporting we were going to do on that topic, I'd be uncomfortable. But it supplements the reporting. It gives you another window into the topic and the individual who's on the front lines of news.
And today we had our Oshkosh Police Chief to be Scott Royal join us online, and we were on there for about an hour 40 minutes, I think, and he was very happy to be there. And this interesting twist, I guess, on the digital side of it. What's going to happen is he said a lot of really eye-opening things today about how he's going to fundamentally change community policing.
He
in
made
Oshkosh.
news on the chat. There was
and
news.
we decided even beforehand that the weight of the interview and the value of it to the community deserves publication in a prominent place. We've been publishing them, reverse publishing them. That's the term, reverse publishing in the newspaper after it's been online. Today's will be printed in today's conversation page with his mugshot and a illustrative kind of photo to give people who don't participate online equal access to that interview, which I think was pretty eye-opening today. So.
Yeah, he'll be coming on this show.
We're hoping to have him in
Yeah.
July sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we switch to city issues, can I just do one more in the
Sure.
newspaper?
Yeah,
You
go
guys
ahead.
are writers, and there are a lot of people out there like these community columnists. Can you share a couple of suggestions on writing? Now, I know you guys write for deadlines, which is probably the best way to write because you have to. Any suggestions for people out there on how do you write and how do you come up with the ideas and anything comes off the top?
Well, I think most people would be surprised if we said everybody has a story to tell. Tell that story. Write what you know about. Write what you feel about. Put yourself into it. And I think sometimes people assume that there's a formula, there's a scientific way of doing it, and really the best writing comes from people's feelings and what they feel, what they know, and who they are. And we've always tried to tell the community columns, develop your own style. Write what you know, write what you feel passionate about.
How about you, Alex?
I agree 100% with that. And shameless plug here, I am also looking for more community columnists. So if you're interested, email me at the Northwestern.
You know, you're basically saying what Truman Capote said. He said anyone can write if they have something to write about.
Right.
Yep.
And now I want to hit you on one other. How do you get a turn of a phrase? Like I sent you, where did you come up with a perpetual state of bewilderment? Did that hit you?
Bafflement.
Bafflement. Were you in the shower in the morning, riding the bike to work? Where do you come up with these things?
You know, I guess it's just one of those, we do a lot of talking amongst ourselves.
Okay.
And I will actually try phrases out in our news meetings, at our edit boards. And if I get a response, if somebody says, oh, that's interesting, I'll try to incorporate it into a piece of writing. But, you know, it's trial and error.
Okay.
You know, there's probably as many phrases that I've tried to coin that have bombed.
Yeah. But phrases make good writing, don't you think? I mean, they're catchers.
I think that's one of the things that a writer tries to do
Absolutely.
is turn that phrase that captures somebody. I mean, one of the phrases that I'm infamous for is the cobblestoner phrase.
Yes.
And you know, I used that once. I used that once in a column.
Notice how he looked at me when he said
They've used it on that show more than once.
But it keeps coming up. So somewhere along the line that resonated.
Yeah.
And I can only take credit for it one time because I only used it
Well,
once.
let me offer another phrase that I don't think you had anything to do with. I don't know if it was our former mayor and city councilor Melanie Bleckel or somebody else who coined the term golden commodes in the context of the amphitheater restrooms.
Bathrooms, yeah.
And no matter where you stand on that issue, it stuck. And that wasn't guys in blue blazers writing that. That was a community person. That was a community leader. So
Yeah.
the people out there who are reading and contributing to our letters to the editor, they're coming
trimming
up with
phrases,
just
yeah.
as many great phrases as we are.
Yeah.
So another affirmation.
Yeah. Joe Lunchbucket was another one that came from the Northwestern.
That was Jim Metz.
A long time ago, yeah.
A former editorial page editor.
Well, with all the changes electronically that have been going on over at the Oshkosh Northwestern guys, has it changed at all how your day-to-day staff reporters do their job? Do they have laptops in their cars, or how?
There's a phrase that we use that we're working for, that we want our reporters to be mojos, mobile journalists. We want them out of the office, in the community. We want them with their laptops at meetings. Alex gave one of our reporters the ultimate compliment the other day. Mandy Wimmer was at the school board meeting, and they started talking about the $600,000 budget shortfall. She's got her laptop, she's got a broadband card, she plugs right into our forums, and she said, hey folks, they're talking about budget cuts. What's your thoughts about the budget setting process, and are there any things that could be cut? So right there at the meeting, she is engaging the community in a forum as the school board meeting is going on. It's pretty cutting edge stuff. And so, yeah, they're getting acclimated to digital photography, audio recordings, laptop computers, engaging in forums. We have asked the reporting staff to really stretch their skill set and engage in some of these new concepts that we're practicing.
With the sort of natural partnership of an organization like Oshkosh Community Access Television, which is of course broadcasting, or I shouldn't say broadcasting, but cablecasting public meetings. Someone can sit at home, watch the meeting, keep one eye on their own home PC or laptop, see the conversation evolving in real time,
Almost real time,
with a reporter or a journalist out there who's asking questions. Maybe that reporter throws out a question like, does anybody care to, offer their insight as a legitimate on-the-record source here? I'd love to know what you think about this. That's pretty revolutionary stuff. It's happening around the country. We're not the first to do it, of course, not by any means. But it's happening in hometown Oshkosh. That stuff is what really gets me excited when I see that happening, where you are living journalism. You're participating it, you're living it as it's happening. It demystifies the process. It makes it more rich. Really, really cool stuff when that kind of thing can happen.
I think one of the things that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is that one of the things that we've seen happen as we've ventured into some of these new reporting techniques is that we've lost a little bit of our edge on our enterprise reporting and our investigative reporting. And we need to recapture that. What we're doing is creating a new form of journalism, but what we have to really keep our eye on the ball is that one of the strongest things that we can do for the community is be that watchdog, do that enterprise reporting, that hard edge investigative reporting, and we've lost a little bit of that as we've tried to do some of these experimentations with new journalism. We need to get back to the good, sound, investigative enterprise journalism that I think we had a pretty good reputation. Alex did some really outstanding investigative journalism when he was a reporter. We need to bring that back to the table and make it part of what we do on a daily and weekly basis.
From an editor standpoint, that's a time factor, though, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It's a commitment of time and resources, and we're stretching the reporting staff pretty thin on some of these other initiatives.
There's one other thing that you guys are doing online, and it's called community journalism, or community publishing, I guess is the actual term. Now, this is a place where anyone can publish their news, their photos, what have you, and it's all free. Now, how does that differ from, because it is different from these community journalists or editorialists that you have?
The community newsroom was set up with the concept that we needed to engage the community about activities that are relevant to their lives. And these are the nonprofit groups, the volunteer groups, the civic groups, churches, Cub Scouts. Things that are important to people's day-to-day lives largely are ignored by the newspaper because of staffing limitations and resources. And when we tried to figure out how do we bring that into the newspaper, it became clear that we needed to form a partnership, that we needed to engage these groups in a very direct, immediate fashion. And our guarantee, our pledge is, if you partner with us and work with our editors with the technology we have available, we guarantee that your news will be published online before you leave the building. You'll see it go live, and it'll be in the next day's newspaper. And so far we've been very successful with it, and we're looking for more opportunities to engage the community, to have them tell the community their news, because so much of it is rich in people's daily lives, whether it's Little League Baseball, youth soccer, Rotary clubs, volunteer opportunities at nonprofit agencies. That's important in people's lives, and by and large newspapers don't get that deep into the fabric of the community.
And so this is not something where someone can stay at home and submit it. They have to come down to your offices?
You can stay at home and submit it through our Get Published feature.
Okay.
But when you do that, there's no surefire guarantee that it goes in the next day or maybe the day after that.
Okay.
That you kind of step into queue to get your information out there. If you come down and work with us, and we can make sure that everything looks ready to go, then we publish instantly on the internet in our what we call our main content well on our website. It pops right up there. It's tagged as community news, and then the next day, it's published in the Northwestern in print.
And anyone can do it.
Yep.
Don't have to have any special background in journalism.
I had a guy call me a couple days ago, and he said, "Alex, I wonder how can you help me get my information?" And we're starting a support group for people, I believe, who use like a breathing apparatus to assist their breathing. I said, "Yeah, you know, our copy desk assistant chief, Jessica Aycock, is over there. Here's her email." I guess he came down later that day and got it all set up. So anybody, any group that's out there that sees a value to it.
Okay.
I mean, we know that one of the things that we have to be cautious about is the non-commercialization of it, because it's intended for nonprofit volunteer agencies, recreational agencies, and so we're cautious that we don't have a business trying to promote services or goods and make it look like news. You know, so we're being very cautious about evaluating what's being submitted and what the intent of it is. We do offer training sessions called the Northwestern Academy, where people come in for a 1-hour training session where we give them, you know, just some real fundamental basic information about how to construct a story, how to, you know, what the technology is like to submit it. And then if they want to work with us on a one-on-one basis, we schedule them for appointments to come into the office and sit down with one of our staff to put their story together and get it published.
All right. Anything else on electronic journalism or anything?
But I got all these other questions on city
All right.
and school board that I'd like to
Go
look
ahead.
at. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Ken Binder, the Eric Hoffer of Oak Street, at the last Common Council meeting opined that this was the best council in decades. He started with 20 years and he got so excited. He said, no, in 40 years. And then he said the 4-3 votes were very good for the city. What's your response?
Well, I think Ken is onto something. I think this is a very unique council. They've got a ways to go to before we can declare them the best council ever. But I think there's some interesting dynamics taking place there, and I think that the fact that the voters were willing to turn out an incumbent, a well-liked incumbent, and bring in some people with different ideas, different approaches, different thoughts. I think that's good for the city, and I think we have to wait a while to see how this council actually performs before we can crown them the best.
Ken gets excited early.
Yeah. But I think there's a different dynamic at work there, and I think there's a different thought process there, and I think that it's not business as usual. And I think I don't think that's a bad thing, and I think that's what Ken was maybe picking up on in his assessment.
He's very insightful in some of his comments.
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
he is.
He pays close attention.
He does, yeah.
Yes.
So you'd say that at this point, cartographer King and Tony Palmieri and Tower as mayor, too early to say, but they've kind of changed the structure and of the meeting a little, of the group a little bit. They bring
think-
something different to the table.
I don't think it just started with this last election. I
Okay.
think you look back, I mean.
With Bain, maybe, before
Councilor
Brian.
Brian Bain, I think, is really been a force on the council, and not a force to shove people one way or the other, just a force to try and get some stuff done, and when possible, you know, bring the council together as opposed to rip it apart. That's always a good thing for.
One of the things that struck me is that we had Mayor Tower up visit the editorial board shortly after the election, and we asked him specifically about the makeup and relationship of the individual council member, and we asked him directly, have you met with council member Esslinger? And he said, I have. We met at his bar, you know, in his territory. Make him feel comfortable, I assume, but they had a discussion about the priorities and the relationships and what are you interested in and how can we work together. I think that finding of common ground is very important, and I think
And
that
it's been lacking in the past.
I think it has been. I think there's been an us against them
Yep.
type of approach, and I think I've seen Mayor Tower reach out a little bit to be more inclusive. I think there's an informality there that some people aren't quite comfortable with, but I think I understand why the informality is there, and I think that it's going to be interesting to watch, particularly when we get to budget time.
What informality are you talking about, Stu?
Well, Mayor Tower will call council members by their first name, rather than the salutation, Mr. Bain or Ms.
Nothing
King.
earth-shattering. but-
Nothing
yeah.
earth-shattering, but there's just an informality there. It's respectful, but I think he's trying to develop a more collegial atmosphere with the council members, so they don't feel like it's that there's barriers, that there's obstacles in their ways of having good discussion of the issues, respectful conversations of the issues.
Okay, all right. Speaking of the council, Stu, your last column, as we tape this anyway, your last column was put in the paper on June 17th, and it primarily had to do with the sidewalk flap over on River Mill. And you accused the council of falling into the trap of micromanaging city government. You took a shot at Paul Esslinger for apparently knowing a lot about sidewalks. And he said, with Esslinger's expertise in sidewalks, I expect to see him show up at River Mill with a float, a trowel, and a safety vest ready to pour concrete. And then he took another shot at newcomer Jess King and referred to her as a council cartographer because she gave, as you said, an exhaustive lesson on the longitude and latitude of every sidewalk in Oshkosh, complete with annotated map of the city where there are no sidewalks but ought to be sidewalks.
Maybe you better read the whole thing.
No, I think that there's a fundamental, there always has been a fundamental problem with the city council, in that they're not quite certain of what their role is. And I think if you have hired professionals and you have confidence in the hired professionals, you give them direction, you set the policy, and you have the expectation of results. And I think for whatever reason, council members have decided that we need to look at individual sidewalk projects. We need to look at individual streets. And I think there's bigger policy issues at stake that require the attention and the energy of the council. And when you get down to these micro decisions about sidewalks, no sidewalks, I think that detracts from the overall business that needs to be conducted. I think you should have confidence in the Director of Public Works to know where sidewalks need to be installed. If you don't have that confidence in the Director of Public Works, you need to be looking at replacing them or clearly articulating the expectations for him to do his job. I don't think it's a council member's responsibility to be looking at individual sidewalk projects.
As this has come up in brief discussion in the information center as we're planning, story coverage and such, I think I said to you today or earlier today that I chimed in and I said, I have a sidewalk project that I would like done. It's called Oshkosh's Riverwalk. Everybody will walk on it. It will line the Fox River in a very vibrant, energetic way. It will truly redefine this community. It's on paper right now. I don't know how aggressively we're going after it and working with developers to leverage their bucks to help make it happen, but I'd like that sidewalk.
Yeah. I just think there's bigger issues, city hall operations, budget, downtown redevelopment, the riverfront. Those are the issues that council members are elected to guide the city on and guide the city manager and the department heads. And when we start getting into these intramural tussles about sidewalks, no sidewalk, it detracts from the bigger issues that need to be dealt with.
Do you think there's more going on, though, with the River Mill Road than just micromanaging?
Well, if there is, that's shame on that.
Yeah.
Shame on that.
But certainly that's one of the themes that at least the people from the neighborhood put out rather strongly.
I didn't even want to get engaged in that conversation because it makes some assumptions that I'm not comfortable with. I thought the fact that it came from a council member directly to an agenda in the form of a resolution really gets into the nitty-gritty operations of public works.
Let me play devil's advocate for a minute. Your main editorial, or one of them before the election, was that the city manager needed a boss.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of said you thought the mayor was the boss and had more potential or more power than the council members.
Mm-hmm.
Well, isn't the sidewalk issue in part an answer to your call for that they don't feel that city government, the managers, are doing things?
Well, I think when the difference is, sorry to I think because I think I wrote that editorial on behalf of the newspaper. I think the difference here is it's a matter of policy. Yeah, when it comes to policy, the council's boss. They should be the ones saying, city guys, manager, staff, that did not carry out the policy. I think
it would have been perfectly acceptable for any council member to say, Mr. City Manager, I'd like to have the Public Works Director draft a report giving us the priorities of sidewalks, the budget we set aside, the capital improvements, how we plan to install sidewalks, and where are we on the priority list. And by the way, bring me up to date on the situation in River Mill. And present that report to us so we can analyze it and give you some direction. I think that would have been appropriate public policy. But there was a misstep there. The
If
misstep
you were on
was-
the council, would you have voted to put sidewalks immediately in there?
We're on the council. I think I would have voted against it on the basis of this is not an appropriate resolution for council members to be dealing with. Let's send it back to the department head.
Kind of like the Bain motion, or the amendment that
yes,
failed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How about you?
You know, I appreciate your question.
You don't want to answer
How do,
it?
well, do I not want to answer it? I do want to answer it, actually. That's the problem. I do want to answer it. I don't think, you know, I respect those counselors, each and every one of them. I respect, you know, all the civic officials who work here, and they've got to wade through those decisions and face the public on that dais. I'm not there. I'm just the guy that's writing the opinion
I
and trying.
know, but
You know, but you can
Use
ask.
his answer.
Yeah.
You can ask.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the non-answer.
Does the public hear what newspaper guys think about sidewalks in River Mill? I don't know.
Okay, I got one more issue with the sidewalk. I chatted with a retired county supervisor who represented Oshkosh for many years. I'm not going to mention his name. We were talking in front of the parking lot at the library the other day, and I asked him about the sidewalk issue, and I said, you know, is this about sticking it to the rich? And he looked at me and he said, yes. And he said, I like it. Is that a subtext of what's going on in the
Well,
city, in part on that issue?
You know, it could be. It could be. And I think we need to be. I think we need to be bigger than that. I think we need to outgrow that. I think this whole concept of north of the river, south of the river, the haves, the have-nots, I think that impedes the city progress. And I think that we ought not look for ways to engage at that level. I think we need to look for ways to outgrow that for the city to really to move forward.
Okay. One of your community columnists is Kevin McGee, former city council member. He recently wrote a column on the convention center, and he's taken a little bit of heat online for that. He does not feel that the city should be contributing taxpayer money for the convention center, whether it be a new convention center or an improved existing convention center. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you can make the same argument about the airport. I don't use it. Doesn't do me any good. Why should my taxpayer dollars go towards the airport? And I think I think you could argue both sides of that. Yeah, why do we? Well, the EAA, does it bring money in? And you know, an economist might say, well, the multiplier effect isn't as great as what's been said. So anything that is supported by tax dollars is open to question if it doesn't run past your street, and it isn't picked up, you know, every other Thursday morning. I appreciate Kevin's analytical viewpoint of that. I would disagree with him about, do we need it? Well, probably not. Is it an enhancement to the city? I would argue that, yeah, on a lot of levels it would enhance the city's tourism economy.
I think it's also an issue of scale. You know, we're not talking about building a KC Center down there. The things that they're proposing are really, I mean, it's expensive. Let's face it. It's going to be, you know, about $2 million, upwards of $2 million to renovate the place. But, you know, getting that thing wired properly. Whoa, let me tell you, when the Democrats came for their convention down there a year and a half ago or a couple of years ago, you know, there were media and people from around Wisconsin who were spitting the name Oshkosh because they couldn't even get a reliable internet connection, as I recall. I think I've got that right. But that's one of the things I think they want to do. It's not just purely cosmetic, and it's not just stacking on or blowing up and expanding. It's getting those kinds of internal guts issues dealt with that conventioneers need these days. It's just, they need it.
Well, I guess I was a little surprised that they're just wanting to kind of renovate it now, because originally I thought, if memory serves me correctly anyway, they were saying we needed something bigger in order to attract bigger conventions, and somewhere along the line something has changed.
I think there will be some expansion to it too as well. Will there be some space growth in there?
I'm not.
I've not
I'm not sure.
I've not really dug into the new renderings and plans, but I think yeah, I mean, the long lament about that convention center is it's too small.
I think it's difficult to compete with trade shows like auto shows
Right.
and boat shows because of the facilities around the Fox Valley and Milwaukee and Madison. But I think if you're looking for a niche, business conferences where people need access to high-tech presentations and conferences and whatnot,
Right.
I think there might be a niche there that the convention center could fill.
Really nice meeting space.
Meeting space.
Like,
One of the big issues potentially facing this city in the next year is the 45 million or whatever it is referendum on the schools. And I know from being a former editorial writer that the newspaper will play an incredibly important role in discussing how that will move forward. Where are you people at on this? Do you know what's going on? Have you taken any editorial stands yet on the progresses of this or lack of progress? This is an incredibly important issue.
Well, my observation has been is that if the plan is good and you demonstrate the need, the city will support it. They built Carl Traeger Elementary School and Middle School on a big bond referendum. They improved Jefferson School on a big bond referendum because the school district was able to demonstrate the need of that bond issue. Now, the Sunset School referendum failed pretty convincingly because the school district did not demonstrate a convincing argument as to why that was needed. The voters are pretty smart. If you make a good, solid argument and present your case and document your case, the voters will support a referendum to get the job done. And it depends on how the school district marshals its arguments and demonstrates the need for whatever amount of money they end up asking for. And I think the jury's still out. I don't think it's doomed to failure necessarily, but I certainly don't think that it's going to be an easy vote to pass.
Well, especially when their minds have changed as
It's-
often. I mean,
yeah.
it's always a different plan. How difficult was that as a newspaper trying to stay on top of the latest plan?
Well, I don't know that anybody's been able to stay up on top of the latest plan, to tell you the truth. I don't believe people understand that the superintendent of school can change boundary lines administratively. He doesn't need to have board approval to do that. That's an administrative function that he could do. The Oshkosh School District has been very open in its attempt to engage the public to find out what's the public sentiment, what does the public want. And while I appreciate where they're coming from, sometimes it can be counterproductive. When you have meetings that last till 2 o'clock in the morning, listening to every parent who wants to keep the school open, I'm not sure that really is beneficial or moves the issue forward. And I think at some point the school board is going to have to direct the administration, give us your best plan that we can vote on, and let's get this thing done. Because Oshkosh has been talking about closing schools and shifting boundary lines for 8 years now, and they've lost some momentum. I think they had some momentum when they had the independent consultants come in with some recommendations. I think they've lost that momentum.
Yeah.
And it's going to be difficult to get anything passed now because people, and they love their neighborhood schools. And I love the neighborhood schools my kids went to. And I'm going to fight for it to keep it open. And that's a given. And at some point the school board has to say, there's bigger stakes here. We can't afford to keep 17 elementary schools open in the condition that they are, because it's costing us dearly on the programming and the curriculum. And it takes some political willpower to make that call.
Exactly.
Now I understand that what's happening in the background is certain groups are saying, well, if my school is on that plan to be closed, we're going to campaign against a referendum. And that has to factor into their decision-making process. What allies and opponents do they have out there that they're gonna have to work to convince and win over?
All comes down to politics once again. Go ahead.
Do you understand the 46 million, what it's for at this point? If we had to write down what that 46...
Well, I couldn't do a line item budget
Yeah.
for you on it, but I know that the original plan was to expand some existing schools, and there was new buildings involved with it. So it was construction of, expansion of, and upgrading of the schools that were going to be incorporated in the plan.
Of the 6 schools that we had on our list last time, now they've added 2 back of that 6, so it's
Yeah.
it's down to 4. And it just keeps evolving, I guess, is my point. But
Yeah. Go ahead.
is the city not enforcing the smoking ban? And if you think they are, why do you think they're not enforcing the smoking ban?
Well,
Is the city not enforcing the smoking ban?
it's like the seatbelt law. You know, do police officers go out and actively look for people not wearing their seatbelts so they can pull them over and tag them? I think it's one of those. I think it's one of those issues where it's on the books. If there is a flagrant violation, if there's a call, if somebody complains that they're smoking, they're not supposed to, I think they'll make an attempt to enforce it. I don't think they're out looking for violations actively. That's my sense of it. I don't know. I know Paul Spiegel, and I know he's very conscientious, and I know that he takes enforcement of ordinances very seriously. I'm not sure he has the staff to be able to go out and do spot checks to find out if there's violations. I'm not sure that I want the city health officer to be out there, going restaurant to restaurant, hoping to catch somebody with a cigarette butt and an ashtray.
I'm not sure the ordinance is even written that way. If I recall right, I think you've actually got someone has to file a complaint.
It really
Right.
comes down to a observant or conscientious diner out there who gets enough gumption to call. I think the police department is often the first call too, and then this health department's notified, and it sort of progresses through a complaint process. So it's
You just interviewed the new chief of police.
Right.
Yeah.
Would some open process have helped all of us a little bit better? I mean, this was totally closed.
today's conversation page addresses that.
Really?
I don't know if you can say it would have helped. I think it certainly would have inherently improved the process. Scott Royal's a really nice guy. I think he seems like a pretty dynamic leader who's got some actionable take charge plans that he's got. I mean that'll be apparent in tomorrow's conversation, or if you go online you can read it already. We just think it's better policy. It's better to have public involvement, and we opined in our editorial that it's not just the police chief, the new airport director. Again, quality gentleman, has experience at the airport, but did anybody really know that was going on, or did anybody? How engaged were stakeholders? Senior Center we also mentioned as another quality person, but.
On one of your shows, Ann Frisch, who is very involved with the Wisconsin Freedom of Information Council, made an excellent point. And her point was that government should look for reasons to be open, and they should err on the side of openness. And it seems like we're seeing too many occasions where they're looking for reasons to do things in executive session or in secret or without full disclosure. And I think that government builds credibility, it builds trust when they do things in the open and when they invite public participation. I don't think there would have been anything wrong with the Oshkosh Police and Fire Commission inviting the public to attend a meeting to meet the 5 finalists.
Absolutely.
Or the 2 finalists, and ask questions and meet them and raise concerns. That wasn't done. Now, does that make the process not legitimate? No, it just isn't as good as it could have been.
One final thing.
Sure, go
Tell
ahead.
us something we don't know that's going to happen in Oshkosh before the next time we have you people back. Each of you get one choice. Share
boy.
some things that you're working on or you think is going to happen, because we need to know this because we want these people on the show, right, Cheryl?
Well, I think what you're going to see is a continuing evolution of the Northwestern's involvement with electronic journalism. I don't know what the specifics are because we haven't explored them yet, but we think that the community is better served by having multiple outlets of information and engage the community in a partnership. So I think we're going to try to build on that. I wish I could give you some specific examples of what that might look like, but we've put our toe in the water, and we like what we're seeing and what we're hearing and how this is evolving.
I meant a news story tip, not the electronic thing.
Not the commercial for the Northwestern.
He could not resist.
I know. No, he's done it really well, but no, I wanted to.
I'm racking my brain here.
Come on, give me
I
one,
really
Alex.
am.
Big story the rest of the year. What is it going to be?
I do think the access development down in the South Shore redevelopment area is going to be a big issue. Not because there's like rancor and people angry about it. I think it's come time in Oshkosh where it's like, what's it going to be, folks? do we move ahead with something that may not be, bells and whistles and all that good stuff, but something that maybe would be at least something to spark development elsewhere along the river, a start.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much to both
Yeah,
of you
it was
for being
fun.
here. It was a fun hour.
Thanks for
Enjoyed
having
it.
us.
Thank you.
It went
Thank
fast.
you both.
All right. And as always, thanks to all of you at home also for letting us into your homes for the last hour. We'll see you again. Until we meet again, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.